Welcome to ASPW Chronicles. The purpose of this series is to release on YouTube films that have never been shown to the public before, apart from on television. As I was building my new website, which is to enable people like you, fans of the show, to go in and find my backlist and playlists that are easy to follow, I realized that there are a whole lot of TV shows that had been broadcast but never on YouTube. So I've re-edited them. They're all long form. And this one I filmed in 2008. I traveled to a place called the Richtersveld, far northwestern part of South Africa, the only desert mountain region of South Africa. It was an amazing trip. I was driving a Toyota Fortuner and my guide Greg was driving an 80 series Land Cruiser. You join us today, my good friend cameraman Steve Sell driving today, and we're on our way to probably one of the most spectacularly beautiful parts of all of South Africa. It's the only mountain desert. It is found in the far, far northern Cape, and we have as our companion a new vehicle, also a Toyota, this time a Fortuner. I'm Andrew St Pierre White. Join me as I share my passion for building four-wheel drive trucks and then travelling to the remotest parts of the world. We have just crossed the border into the Northern Cape, and in front of us is the town of Springbok. Now, Springbok is the capital of Namakwaland. Namakwaland is famous for its flowers, and during October, the flowers cover the land. Absolutely beautiful. We're not here in October, but what we are going to do is see some spectacular flowers of a difference. We're traveling north from here to a place called the Richtersveld. The Richtersveld is a World Heritage Site, and it's not a World Heritage Site for nothing. Springbok Lodge is without question one of the landmarks of the Richtersveld. And while we're not in the Richtersveld yet, it is a place to visit on your way up here, and I'll tell you why you have to visit this place. Apart from the fact that there are lots of lovely books here, lots and lots of maps and gemstones and semi-precious stones, a fantastic collection which you can actually buy. The real reason for coming here is this. They make a very, very good burger. The lodge also has a marvelous collection of maps, artifacts and paintings. It's really more like a museum than a shop. But while enjoying my meal, I couldn't help feeling that I was being watched. This section of the trip, we are being guided through the Richtersveld by somebody who has been there, I think, probably more than anybody who doesn't actually live there. He reckons he's been there over 80 times. His name is Greg van der Rees, well known in South Africa's 4x4 and off-roading community, and he has made the Richtersveld a specialty of his. There's one problem. We have to follow him in our Fortuner. He is driving his own vehicle, which is a Toyota Land Cruiser 80, highly modified, oversized wheels and tires, raised suspension, front and rear differential locks, and we are going to have to keep up with him, which is going to really put the Fortuner, and I think my own skills, to the test. And what we've got to do now is we're meeting him tonight at approximately midnight. He has given us the coordinates, the GPS coordinates, of a cave near a town called Lekkersing. And that's where we're off to now. Getting dark, and the difficulty bit of navigation will be relying almost totally on our GPS. love travelling at this time of night as the sun goes down, the mountains, the detail in the mountains turn to silhouette. Always when I drive at this time of night, there's a certain level of apprehension as it gets dark, and then all you can see is this 30-40 feet in front of you. Right, I'm going to put in the GPS coordinate. This is the map that I've had printed. Cave 2 is what we've got to find, and here is the coordinate.
Driving northwest.
Yes, well done. Thank you very much for that. Enter. And what we need to do is...
Driving northwest.
We've arrived at Steenkop. Got a bit of a problem. As we came over the hill to the town, we could see the lights. We've arrived here at the one and only fuel station. Everybody's congregating here, but there's a power failure. Nobody's pumping fuel. We've got half a tank, 40 litres in our jerry cans. I don't think it's enough, and I'm not sure what to do.
In Africa, they improvise. This particular petrol filling station, they lit their way using, yes, candles. I decided to park next to the diesel pump anyway, so I will be the first to be served once the power returns. Continuing with only half a tank from this point is just not an option. That didn't take too long.
This vehicle's quite light on fuel. We're getting 8.5 kilometers per litre. Not bad, not bad at all. This should last us the major portion of the Richtersveld.
Look at the sign behind me. Creamy Games. I wonder what they are. I wish I'd asked.
I've got a map in the GPS and an info map, digital map in the GPS, which is helping as well. But now we're off the main road. We're no longer on the main X-Team road. Very, very narrow. Picking our way through, relying now really 100% on the GPS that it's taking us towards our destination. The Richtersveld World Heritage Site border lies right here. Isn't it wonderful? Well, I guess we won't know until morning.
I'm overwhelmed.
It's daybreak in the cave, cut out of a huge sandstone cliff. A little after midnight, Greg, our guide, had joined us.
Greg, this is Steve.
Morning, Steve.
This is Greg.
What outside? How's it, Greg? Good. Didn't sleep well last night. No, I actually did. It was cold as about 4 o'clock. Yes, the wind came up a little bit, man. But Andrew and I didn't disturb you because we were talking quite a lot last night. Yeah, I made a whole lot of notes. There's a couple of things I'm going to go over with you this morning. Because I got you, I think it was about 12:30. And Andrew and I probably chatted till about 1 o'clock, 1:30. Oh, what a lucky place, eh? It's beautiful, eh? It's a nice spot. Yeah. Lots and lots of owls when I came in last night. There was something making a noise here this morning, like a chip, chip, chip. There's mice here. There's lots of mice, and then last night when I got into bed there were bats. Okay. Because of all the caves, there's quite a lot of bats around here.
We're on our way to Wildepaardland, or Wild Horse Ridge. Greg informs me that there were, or might even still be, wild horses there.
Well, this is the first of them. Obstacles which are challenging to the vehicle. Doesn't look too bad. But you see, Greg's vehicle is obviously far more capable off-road than mine. Yeah, it's working.
Right.
And of course he'll just go off blasé, just off he'll go up the hill over boulders and everything with his vehicle, and I'm going to have to keep up with him. So I think, actually, I'm anticipating on this trip we are going to be pushing the Fortuna to its absolute off-road limit. I'll be very interested to see where that is.
This place is just beautiful, absolutely stunning. And this is where you were last seen wild horses?
About 8 years ago. This ridge has got the name of Wildepatrand, which is a wild horse ridge.
Right.
And we were camping, and we woke up at about 3 in the morning with funny noises. And there were 5 wild horses. The one chap had a canvas tent, and there was nothing else to eat, so they started to eat the tent that he was in. And I've seen the horses twice. There's not many of them, but they basically inhabit these ridges around here.
And there are still some around?
There are still some wild horses here.
Wow.
And while we're here, I just wanted to point out that mist bank.
Yeah.
The local people call it a malmoki.
What we had in the camp?
Is mad, yes. I don't know what the moki stands for.
Yeah.
And the Namakwa people call it a haris. It's just their name. It's basically the Kolbenguela current creates this mist that rolls in. It doesn't normally come this far, because we're probably about 45-50 kilometers from the coast. Where we're standing now is very remote. Ekstensfontein is probably 20 kilometers away. There are some nomadic people in the area, but you're probably going to have 10 people per 150 square kilometers. A little bit to the south, where we came from this morning, there was a prospector called Fielding, and he did quite a lot of work there looking for minerals. Didn't find anything. This whole band is fairly dead. As we move closer to Kubus and Sendlingsdrift, the minerals start to change, and you start to get workable minerals. Not that much was ever found in great quantity, except commercial diamonds. But that's what's so nice. There's nobody here, nobody wants to come here, and it's
amazing. It's absolutely beautiful. A common interesting feature of the low-lying areas of the Richtersveld are the dwellings used by the local goat herders. Whenever I've come to the Richtersveld, I've seen these Nama huts.
Yeah.
And they're never the same, but they're always similar.
I think firstly it's interesting that the people that live here. What is now referred to as the Nama is actually originated from the San. The San people occupied the area, and shards of pottery have been found dating back over 1,000 years. Ostrich egg shell beads have been found here. Then what happened about 2,000 years ago, a group of people called the Kukun came down from Botswana, and the people that are now referred to as the Namas or the Namakwa people are a mixture of the two. The house itself is quite interesting. They have various types of houses. This is just obviously galvanized sheeting. But you also get the Mikey's hut, which is made of mats. We will see some of those later. If the occupier is not married, then it doesn't have a roof on. The only time it has a roof on is if they're married.
Is that a status thing?
I think it just indicates to other people that they are married and they now have status in the community.
So a bachelor is not permitted to have a roof, or it would be frowned on if he had a roof?
I think it's just tradition and folklore amongst the people.
Okay, all right.
The other interesting thing, if we can walk over there, is they're pastoralists and they trek between the different areas.
Yeah.
They'll put cloths up. And,
like the red cloth?
Like the red cloth.
Do the colours denote anything specifically?
The colours aren't important, but I spoke to one of the local gentlemen, a guy called Willem Joseph, and he mentioned to me that they put these cloths up and they put them around areas where their lambs are. Now this would typically be where the lambs are kept, and the red cloth keeps away the jackals. It's just folklore amongst the people, but that's what they still believe. Now if you look underneath, it says Norotaki.
Yes, Supreme Elegance Collection.
Yes. It's interesting, they're all very involved in the church. After Dominee Ekstein moved to the area many years ago, and so they're still involved with the church, but they still mix their folklore in with
Yes,
it.
yeah.
So they would be here for a while. If we look over there, that would be the camp where the animals are. They move them in there at night, and then early morning, probably around 6 o'clock, 5:30, they leave with their animals, and then they go into the mountains and these little clover, and then they work there for the day.
Right.
And the other interesting thing, if you look around, this looks like a desert, but a little bit up the river,
or up the river bed, there's natural springs. So if you know where to go, you could hide out here forever and no one would ever find you. And there is water.
This place is called Tierhoek, or Tiger Corner. Tigers in Africa?
The Tierhoek, well, firstly the local people refer to leopards as tiere or tigers. But that's how this place got its name, because they managed to corner a leopard here which had been eating their goats, and it was caught in a trap. This place is also interesting in that a lot of the prospectors used it as a base. They also built a house here in 1970, and they operated from here exploring the area. Lots of baboons around here, some jackal. I think it's probably one of the most pretty places in the whole of the area. Where we're situated now, we probably about 20 kilometers south of Kubus and about 30 kilometers west of Extiensfontein. What has happened lately is this whole area has been turned into a conservancy by the local people, run out of Extiensfontein. And since then they've built braais, they've built toilets, there's a water tank. It doesn't usually have water in, but there is a water tank. And you can book the spot and camp here for an evening. Very, very pretty at night when it's a full moon.
Wow, look at this.
Beautiful, eh?
Yeah, look at this. This thing's smashed.
These rocks have fallen from here and formed these caverns.
Look at this. This is a clean break. Eh? What broke that? That's amazing. I think somebody suffering from claustrophobia might feel a little uncomfortable in here. This weight, this weight on top of you.
Don't sneeze in case it slips. Wondergat has got an interesting legend or folklore behind it, and that is that it's the home of a 40-foot snake. And when Willem Joseph, he claims to have seen this serpent, and the serpent can transform itself into a maiden, and then it'll lure the young men and drown them in the river.
Yeah, that is seriously way far down. It is black down there. You wouldn't survive a fall.
No. Dr. Song, one of the early German prospectors, he plumbed the hole. The hole's about 18 meters vertical, and then it has a horizontal shaft. They say the total depth is 40 meters, but when they were down there, there's no serpent, they're just bats. So I actually wonder how many people are lying at the bottom if you ever were to get to the bottom. Just be careful, Andrew, somebody might push you in that hole.
We've come through the entrance to the national park. They call it Trans-Frontier Park because the park has actually now been extended across the Orange River and quite well into Namibia, hence the word Trans-Frontier. The road is now descending and we've got a clear view of the Orange River Valley in front of us as we approach a place called Sinderlingsdrift. Sinderlingsdrift is the center point for the national park. It's run from that area. There's also a pont there where you can cross the river into Namibia. The day, this time of day is normally excruciatingly hot here. It reaches 35, 36 degrees most days, including many days in winter. We're blessed with beautiful weather. It's 25, 26 degrees, a light breeze, and it's actually been really, really nice. And our next stop will be Sinderlingsdrift. Amazing thing about the Orange River is, after days of driving through such arid terrain, such beauty but harsh terrain, you come across the Orange River, which is this jewel, this magnificent river that cuts its way through this mountain desert. It's an astonishing thing to see, particularly if you're driving through and you don't expect it. Now, we could cross into Namibia via this pont. Instead of going into Namibia, I'm going to cut inland a bit, and actually we're going to follow the Orange River into the Richtersveld National Park. And in the national park, there's surely the most beautiful and spectacular parts of all of the Richtersveld.
Proclaimed a national park in 1991, the park measures 1,600,000 square kilometres. The national park does not in fact lie within the boundaries of the UNESCO World Heritage Site, which lies to the south of the reserve. My first drive from Sendelingsdrift to De Hoop, a most wonderful campsite on the river well within the park, is a one I will always remember. It was in 1994. We were a convoy of 3 Land Rover 110s. I remember the most brilliant light shining through the dust on the Land Rovers as they crossed the flat valley. Today, as we cross, the light is similar, but the Fortuna just doesn't look as good. Amazingly, this river is still flowing. In fact, I had a mosquito buzzing around my head a minute or two ago. And it's pretty amazing to find mosquitoes in the Richtersveld. Now this is the river course that the road follows, and just around those corners ahead of us is the beach, the Orange River Beach at De Hoop, which is the most splendid campsite probably in all of the Richtersveld. And I think when driving down here, of those pulling heavy, large trailers, there are some very, very small gaps through which to squeeze. Otherwise, the driving today has been moderately easy, low range for quite a bit of the day, lots of high-speed gravel, but pretty easy going. You find me on the second part of my journey, discovering the secrets of the desert mountains called the Richtersveld in the northern parts of western South Africa. I've been travelling with my good friend and cameraman Steve Searle and our guide for this trip, Greg van der Rees.
Well, it's early morning on the Orange River. There's nothing quite like spending an early morning on a river, because the amazing thing is that colours change constantly, minute by minute. And that's common to all rivers, but particularly the orange in these mountains. Because as the sun comes up, the tops of the mountains catch the sunlight, the orange sunlight first. And it spreads down and it moves down all the mountains around you. We've just seen the support crews for the river canoe companies go past. The canoe companies operate from quite remote areas, and they need supply. So supplies come from all the way from Alexandra Bay, which is miles down the river. And they've got to go against the current all the way up, winding around the river. It takes many, many hours for them to get up. And they replenish the companies and feed the tourists upstream of us.
De Hoop is a good 2-hour drive from Sendelingsdrift, but of all of the campsites within the park, it is one of 2 that should not be missed when visiting the area. Ablution blocks have been built on the western end of De Hoop's open spaces. They're very nice, basic but nice. They consist of a shower, bring your own water, a sink, ditto, and a long drop toilet, and of course a very large swimming pool.
About those 3 rules of the river is: you never dive in head first, you never dive in head first, and you never dive in head first.
Hence
but today I'm going mining. Yeah, Andrew, you look good with it. You look like one of the guys from the Village People. The cameraman. Slightly more buoyant than I thought.
The Richtersveld is a remote destination by anyone's standards. Being out of school holidays, we were alone, even in the reserve. So it seemed. Have you ever considered touring such an area on a motorbike? I know I haven't. I've always been an advocate of travelling light, but this is ridiculous.
We used to carry some water, we used to carry a jerry can, 1 tent, some boxes of food, a fan belt as a spares kit, and now our cars are full of stuff. And then I drive past you and I see this. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Where have you come from?
From Nelspruit.
Yeah.
And I did these myself, because I found that the panniers which you buy in the shops, They're all like in the trunk, you know. So if you want something at the bottom, then you have to like lift, you know, take out everything, you know.
Okay, so you've got like
yeah,
layers.
I've got my whole wardrobe now here, and you know, here's my compressor for the tires when I go from tar to dirt road.
Where's your compressor?
Yeah, here it is.
Oh, okay.
Compressor, and there's my blower for the mattress inside the tent. I've got a little stove here as well.
How many days can you survive now? How many days could you survive without visiting a store?
Well, I would say 3 days.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 days. This is now, you know, just a breakaway, and to get, you know, do something different now, you know, than the normal cars and fridges and lights, you know. This is my bar. I've got Amarula here, and some sherry and red wine and a rosé in there. And some coffee there.
Yeah, and we thought we were alone.
Yeah, quite strange,
hiding,
you know.
behind a tree, behind some bushes.
And the bike is heavy, you know.
Yeah, thick sand. Is that the challenge?
The sand is the big thing. Yeah.
So you're not going along the river now.
No, I'm going back now.
We're going along the river, and the sand is horrific there.
Yes.
It's really bad. Yeah.
No, actually, I told it. I actually came off, and my foot got stuck underneath this when I came off on the way here. But it's fine now. It's just stayed over 2 days, and now I'm going back.
Now we're off to Richtersveld along the Orange River. This is the bit where the driving starts getting exciting, and up to now has been moderately easy going. Now it gets difficult.
Most of the Richtersveld National Park can be easily tackled in a two-wheel drive vehicle as long as it has reasonable clearance, such as would be found on the average pickup. But this track that follows the bed of the Orange River is most definitely confined to four-wheel drive vehicles.
The dust here is absolutely unbelievable, the fine dust, because this is actually silt that we're driving in. Go.
What you want to do? Carry on?
Yeah, carry on a bit. I'm not sure how we're going to film this. We'll just keep going. But it started. The dust has started. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I think if you let down your tires or not, it's not going to make a big difference, because you need as much clearance as you need low pressures in this, because it's so fine that the vehicle actually just sinks straight through it. This is actually silt from the river. This river hasn't flooded for so long that these are very well used tracks.
Andrew, as you get closer on the side of the way, there's different tracks running off, and they're all very deep, probably 25, 30 centimeters deep, and with the standard for tuna, I don't know if you're going to do that easily, so I'll just wait here in case I need to clear out. So I'm about 100 meters past all the dust, and I'm just waiting for you.
Oh, I'm sure we'll get through it.
Apart from the driving being challenging, Steve has to run a gauntlet of the clouds of dust kicked up to protect the cameras.
It wasn't that bad. It just looked worse than it really was. The car went straight through, no problem at all.
Such a hero.
This is Richtersveld. It's a beautiful area. Often the goats come down and crop the grass. The best camping areas along the river have this cropped grass, and it's kept so well mowed by the goats. This is the most eastern point on the river within the reserve that you can reach. From now what we're doing is we're heading inland, and we're heading to an area with a different character altogether, called Kubus.
For lovers of photography, Kloof is a most profitable overnight stop.
Well, day 3, cold night in Kloof. The dew is incredibly heavy. And today promises to be quite a challenging day, because up to now we've not really challenged the Fortuna much. On 2 occasions Greg picked up the radio and said the terrain behind me is quite challenging, and I think he might have suspected that the Fortuna was going to battle. No, we haven't reached that point yet, but what worries me is that he's going to push us, and because there's no ways we can possibly hope to keep up with the 80 series, but I have a feeling that he's the kind of guy who might actually want to see the Fortuna push to its limit, maybe, and actually find its limit. So we'll see what happens today. We're going to be going to a place called Kubus, which is a typical town in the area. They're not as exciting as one might think. They're always quaint, they're always interesting. Then we're going to go to a waterfall. I suspect that there's not going to be any water falling down it, but you never know. And we're going to be visiting some more of the places of the Richtersveld that the general ordinary traveller here have never been to. So we're looking forward to a good day.
This area is called Kloof. The campsite itself is over there, kind of the northeast of us. But at this point here, this is one of the 2 viewpoints. There are 2 of them. One is over there, and it's a little bit ordinary, but this one, closer to the campsite, is spectacular. And in fact, I'm going to try it now. The wind's blowing out, so it might not work. But there is an echo chamber here. Let's see if it works. Basically, from the lookout point, walk west up the top of the kopje, where I'm standing now, and right at the top, start shouting. Hello! Take a deep breath! I can only hear it there. Nor what happens when there's no wind, it bounces off these hills about 4 times and about 180 degrees. Amazing. If you're ever here and there's no wind, try it.
From Kloof, we are heading further inland and out of the national park. And we've bumped into our errant biker again.
Is it? Wonderlijk, I'm glad to hear that, Dave. I'm like the witness side. Right there. Like swimming in a tracksuit, swimming in a, Alright, that's good. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, bye-bye.
I wanted to conduct an interview while actually riding, but that wasn't really possible, so I've strapped a microphone to his jacket and sent him on his way.
Well, I'm driving here in the Richtersveld on the BMW 1200, and what a fantastic bike to drive on. It is rather heavy. Dirt road is not a problem for this bike. The area in here is, the view from a bike is it's fantastic. I'm sure you get a much better view from viewing it from a bike than from a car. Driving in the Kalahari is better driving in the mornings and the afternoons. Midday it gets kind of hot.
One of the most rewarding, fantastic, brilliant things about this kind of exploration is that you come across the unexpected. Often unexpectedly, if you know what I mean.
We came across this on the road to Kloof gate as we were leaving the Richtersveld National Park. We're a couple of kilometers from the gate. Came across this. This is the South African German scientific climate warming experiment. So from this point on, I'm going to have to rely on voiceover because I don't know anything about it. But I thought we should have a look.
These experiments, for the most part, are trying to establish what will happen as the Earth warms up. These chambers, for example, increase the ambient temperature inside by plus 4 degrees Celsius. These nets reduce the levels of fog without affecting the ambient temperature, and they have determined that these plants absorb more water from the fog and dew than rain. A town most typical of those in the area is Kubus.
I loved visiting towns like this. They're so African, they're so ethnic. Love it. It's the kind of town where they have a beauty pageant every year, where the first prize is a ticket to next year's beauty pageant, and the second prize is 2 tickets to next year's beauty pageant. Tell me about Kubus. Is significant to the area, isn't it?
The first map of the area was drawn in 1888, and in about 1930, Dominee Richter came to the area. He was living in Steinkop, and he just had a longing for the people, and he started a mission in Steinkop. It was based on the Rhenish mission from Germany, and then he started mission stations at Lakesang and Kubus. That was between 1930 and 1936. I was just talking to the Dominee now. The mines at the moment are retrenching people, the economy is not good, and where are these people going to work? The schools, he says to me, classroom after classroom is closing because there's just not enough children anymore because the parents are moving, which is a pity. I mean, this has been here now for, 70 years.
Yeah, it's quite sad really to know that.
Not 5 minutes' drive from Kubus is what once was their water supply. Another example of apathy. It's so full of silt, all the dam wall holds back now is weeds. We're now heading up into the mountains again. Greg has promised to take us to some of his favourite places. Needle Rock, Whale Rock, and this sounds most intriguing, the place of the skulls. I might be wrong, but I think this is Needle Rock. It's not obvious at first glance, but it's like a sperm whale lying on its side.
Andrew, I came across this reservoir about 11 years ago. We were looking for water to fill up our water containers, and when we looked inside here we found all these skulls and remains of, I think they're baboons, and every year we come past, or every trip, there are more and more of them. What happens is there's normally 10 centimeters of water in the bottom. They climb in to get to the water and then they can't get out, and then they die in here. And just a quick count now of whole skulls, there's 25 in here now, but there's lots of broken skulls, and in the reservoir next door there's probably another 10.
Yeah.
So it's not a nice way to die.
Where would this have been fed from? There's no windmill close by.
There used to be a windmill up the valley. There's an actual spring up the valley, and the windmill was in the area, and it used to pump water in here. But in 11 years this has never had water in other than a little bit of rainwater.
Sad.
The funny thing is there's a natural spring less than a kilometer from here up the valley. There's a natural spring down the valley, and you sort of wonder why the baboons would climb into the water tank or into the reservoir.
I understand it's called Smith's Pass. This has obviously been man-made. This is not just some track that somebody has found and claimed as their own. A lot of work has gone into this. Greg just said to me on the radio, he's already at the top, that if the Fortuna can do this, then the Fortuna's got to be good, because it's hectic.
I was graded about grade 4.
He reckons it's a grade 4 climb. This is what we've come here for, I suppose. secret of a climb like this is to just try and keep the accelerator as constant as possible. I've wedged my foot against the side, but again, the engine is absolutely brilliant. It's so easy to keep the revs the same, and just picking a careful line. It's going up the hill. It's without the back diff lock, and it's still got up. It just walked up the hill.
What did you think?
It just walked up the hill.
Just walked up the hill.
Once it twitched sideways.
And that loose stone as well.
And it just gripped again.
Oh.
This motor is unbelievable. For a turbo diesel, there's no turbo diesel I've ever driven like this. I was sitting at 1,100 RPM, and when I needed power, it gave it to me instantly.
I could just hear you idling up the hill.
I
Because I couldn't see you. I walked to the edge, but I
idled up
could
the
just
hill.
hear you chugging.
It's good,
Well
eh?
done.
It's good, eh? The only thing that's going to stop this thing is clearance. It's obviously got a weakness, clearance. You know, clearance is good, but not brilliant. That's where you're gonna. There's only
a little piece tomorrow where the clearance is not good, but
well, we'll work at it.
we'll see. But this is, I'm impressed.
Oh, I'm impressed too. Very
I'm
impressed. Oh.
Fine. Now, Andrew, you know, when I see the terrain that you've just driven through, I always used to tell the people that came with me on trips to the Richtersveld that after this everything else is boring. You aren't going to get terrain like this, and almost as radical anywhere else. The pass we're going to on just in front of us is called Flagella. We discovered it about 10 years ago. It was first opened in about 1950 by a farmer whose farm we're going to go to now. And he used to trek up and down this pass with oxen, and he used to bring wheat up and down this pass. So that's why your bread is so expensive these days. Alright, I'll see you on the top.
There is a waterfall located inside the national park, but accessible by road via some very steep passes and very rough tracks. This means pushing the Fortuna to its limits. I wonder where those are.
Greg has just said in the radio now that the recent rains have caused the road to change utterly. Not long ago he was saying that it was actually quite a moderately easy drive, and it's getting actually really quite difficult. Greg's gone to, there's a climb ahead of us. Greg's gone to see if he can make it, and I'm sure he can, but this is, the road is, there's obviously been very heavy rain here because part of the road has been completely washed away. And see, he's moving incredibly slowly. What's the verdict?
Not as bad as it looks. It's radical.
So we're going to do it.
Yeah, we're here. Study, let's do it.
Okay. I have my doubts if this road is possible.
Just as I anticipated, Greg is not going to stop until the Fortuna does.
Gee, it looks difficult. I might need some hand signals on that one piece there. I think we have reached the Fortuna's limit in terms of its ability off-road. I just smacked it quite hard. Nothing damaged, but we are definitely pushing things, and looks like we might not be able to reach the waterfall after all, but I think it's the wise thing to do because we are starting to now hammer the Fortuna. In fact, I wouldn't say the 80 series is struggling, but Greg's having to work hard to keep it going.
Well, day 4 of our expedition, waking up in a little river valley. It's already 7:30 and the sun is still not really began to warm us up at all because the hills around us are quite steep. Camped here last night, stopped driving at about 5:30 after our failed attempt to get to the waterfall, caused mainly by the fact that we, I believe, had reached the Fortuna's limit of its off-road ability. Caused, I might say, only by lack of clearance. Not that the Fortuna's clearance is poor, it just isn't as good as the Land Cruiser 80, so we couldn't quite keep up with it. And even the Land Cruiser 80, I wouldn't say it was battling, but Greg was having to concentrate and work hard to keep the vehicle moving over the rocks. And I have, as a result, huge new respect for the Fortuna's all-round abilities. And a little bit later in the show we'll look at the Fortuna in detail and actually discuss the vehicle and what I have now learnt about it. We camped not 2 minutes drive from here, and we've come across a ruin which Greg tells me has some significance in the area.
What was interesting with Jan de Vries, he's the only person ever to have found gold in these mountains. And he lived there from 1926 until 1952, and then he moved to a place called Kanon Eiland where he died. But what's very significant is as soon as things got bad, Jan de Vries would be seen walking from Kubus up the mountains with his donkey and his gold panning pan, and he'd be gone for a few weeks and he would come back with gold every single time. Now there are no rivers running here, so maybe he chose the seasons correctly, but around Window Falls, legend has it, that's where he found his gold. Just interesting characters. I mean, to move to a place like this, to get here by donkey or wagon, it's going to take you probably a week to 10 days from Alexander Bay, so it's a long trek.
Oh.
As you come down the road, you are met by this astonishing sight of enormous blocks of rock that have obviously fallen from the ridge up above. But they've fallen many thousand years ago, because the markings on these rocks, called petroglyphs, are believed to have been originated by the sand people many, many thousands of years ago. It is quite a thing to see them standing alone next to the road dotted around.
Having reached the river again, we're taking a lunch break at a venue I have visited often when I have travelled through the area.
Bit of a sad place this. This is called Piece of Paradise. It's a camping site on the banks of the Orange River after we've come down Helskloof Pass, quite rough, unkept road, which is the main road between here and Extienfontein, the capital of the Richtersveld. And Piece of Paradise was for years
the nicest place to camp, nicest place to take a rest after a long dry trip. But in 2004 it burnt to the ground and was utterly destroyed and abandoned. And we've come here now because the beach is still lovely. It's a lovely place to swim. We've had a bit of a break here. We've discovered puncture on one of the front wheels of the Land Cruiser, which we're attending to. But it's a tinge of sadness about the place, as it was once lovely, and now it's sad.
Few people are likely to argue at the statement that much of the Richtersveld has been scarred by mining activities. I asked Greg to take us to one of the mines.
We've stopped at a mine just north of the Namibia border. And strange enough, they've got a little coffee shop here, which is rather nice. And outside the coffee shop, they have some flags. Australian, Welsh, and Italian. And I asked her, why the Australian flag? And she said, we didn't have any others. So I thought, well, never mind, that's all right. Don't need an excuse to fly an Australian flag.
And this is the miner, with the unlikely name of Shirley Hayes. I always thought that miners were tough, grizzly men with beards and big boots. Shirley is a qualified blaster, and her mine extracts granite.
Wow, look at that, eh? Beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. That would make a beautiful kitchen top.
It would.
Yeah, but it would be really annoying having to pour water on it before you went in there just to make it look good.
No, they polish it. And then it looks like that all the time.
Put it in your shower.
Put it in the shower.
Put it in the shower.
These blocks up once it's cut and move it.
Such beautiful stone.
It's
It's really amazing.
And once they polish it.
Scattered throughout the Richtersveld is this unique tree. It's endemic and unlike any other. Some say it's half man, half tree.
This is the famous Hoffmans.
That's right.
It's such a beautiful. I've never seen one in such pristine condition as this.
These trees in a bad year grow about 3 millimeters per year, and in a good year between 5 and 6. It's called Pachypodium namaquinum, and there's two names. One is halfmens and the other one is a noordkyker, a north looker. The tree always faces north.
Yeah.
And interestingly, in 10 years that I've been coming here, I've only once seen a flower. It gets a flower right in the middle. The name of the halfmens, the Namas have a legend that thousands of years ago they were invaded by a warring tribe and they were chased from their land, and whoever turned back to look at their old homeland was turned into a noordkyker or a halfmen's tree. And it's very similar to the story of Lot and his wife being turned into a pillar of salt. So all these halfmen's trees, according to legend, are numbers that look back at their homeland. But to think this tree's 400 years old, almost as old as you, Andrew, and it still looks this good.
It looks better than I do, gee. One day in the sun, I'm crispy. Look at this thing, it's beautiful.
I can't believe that anyone visiting the Richtersveld would anytime soon forget the experience. This particular shoot stands with the best of them. But I'm compelled to leave the best until last.
We're now driving on a plateau. It's in a very, very remote and hilly part of the Richtersveld. And Greg is taking us to what he has called his crater. Now I understand that it's a meteorite crater, and that he has shown very, very few people this particular spot. I'm not actually sure what to expect, but I definitely feel quite privileged in that he's taking us to his secret crater. Well, we're walking up to it now. It's a great big hole in the Earth's surface, on the side of this hill. It's not obvious to the untrained eye, I think, that it is a meteorite hole, but
what on earth else could have created such a hole in the ground? It's certainly feasible that these loose rocks that we're walking on are as a result of a massive income which would have sent millions of tons of rock shattered, spraying out from a central point of impact. Certainly would give a reason why there's so many loose rocks around. Now I'm approaching the edge of the Meteorite Crater now.
Andrew, in 2007 I was exploring in the area, and after probably half a day of driving we looked at the side of this hill and there was a hole in it, and there was no apparent reason to have the hole in the side. Over the years I've seen thousands of hills, none of them have just got a hole in the side. And we came up here and had a look, and believe that it's a meteorite crater. The crater was probably first round, and over millions of years with water erosion it's formed a chute over here. All the geophysicists that I've spoken to say there should be a typical ridge on the edge, but what's interesting is the rock around the edge. It's almost in the form of a jigsaw puzzle, and it's been shattered by some intense impact. The rock in the middle of the crater appears to have an iron base, and I believe it's a crater. There's no other reason for this to have occurred in this place on the side of a mountain 50 meters above the valley. Yeah, hasn't got a name yet, but I just think it's an amazing place. It's, as you saw today, it's quite a long ride in. You're not going to just find it, and we just happened to come across it. Once a year there's 4 of us that explore together. I come usually alone, and on this occasion the 4 of us were together. We were trying to find a route to an interesting mountain where there's supposed to be lots of crystals, and we couldn't get through, and we came down this valley and then saw the crater. So the reason we couldn't get to the mountain was actually worth it, so we wouldn't have found this otherwise.
You know, I look around me, common sense says to me, this is a meteorite crater. I mean, this black, deep black, heavy stone. There's petrified mud. I've never seen a concentration of stone like this. It's almost black. It's a meteorite crater. I'm convinced of it. You know, you can imagine the amount of heat generated from the impact. It must have been incredible. I mean, the rocks are still warm. I've never seen rock like that. I think this is a fitting climax to the Richtersveld, to find this amazing place. These bits of another world lying on the surface. A just tribute to the Richtersveld.